This session's being recorded.
Oh. Okay, we're live.
Live with the camera here. Hi, it's Rebecca Hogan. My screen just went black. Just talk. Technology. Okay, we are talking.
Just talk.
Okay, we're going to talk about. Actually, Jeffrey, you should introduce this. You're the first author on this one.
Okay.
Sorry, I put down there. There we go.
Hello. Okay, I wasn't prepared for this, but that's fine. I can move with it, right? We can go with it. I'll turn sideways. It's always better this way. This is a group collaborative project that a number of us worked on, and I had commented. I think it fits really well with the presentation we just saw, where there was the discussion at the end of that around successful rhizomatic collaborative opportunities as opposed to not having or unsuccessful ones. I know I sent a couple of things with Twitter with that. I'm Jeffrey Keeper. I'm up there, and Rebecca here, and we have Maha, who is also attending, and she was in.
We have a slide that shows who everyone is, so why don't we go there? Okay, we're jumping around real badly.
Yeah, and we appreciate all of you still being here. I'm glad that the glue on your seats is working. Yeah. What we were doing is we had looked at some of the subgroups. There was a rhizomatic MOOC, really two of them, Rhizo 14 and Rhizo 15. Some of you may have heard of them. You may have some familiarity with those. Some of the people who are involved in this work came out of the Rhizo 14, continuing into Rhizo 15. Some joined in the Rhizo 15 component of this. So, right, so I'm glad we have participation here. So what we were looking at is how could we really continue some of this and put some of this into practice. So, next slide. So the group of us who actually then did put this into practice, and I hope that those of you who are attending from remotely, I don't even know which direction to look. But anyway, I hope that those of you who are attending remotely see this.
They're actually seeing the slides because we're showing the slides, so the camera's not actually projecting.
Oh, there you go.
Great. So this is a rather international group. It's a rather diverse group, and compared to what some other people have claimed, it was actually a successful group because we've actually have something to show for it. So and we're still talking to each other, which is great. So
feel free to throw things over at me whenever you want.
Sure. I'll just talk about the scope of the study, and then I'll hand it off to you. So the scope of the study was basically being around. We talk a lot about this rhizomatic learning, which is how can we learn without having clear objectives, clear direction. We're kind of like learning as we're in the process of really constructing our learning and deconstructing it at the same time. And how do we do that when we're distributed? So the work which we're presenting here, we never actually came together to really actually do in real time physically. Everything was done remotely, either remotely via documents such as Google Docs, as well as with some live collaborative sessions via Google Hangout, where I was always just the avatar because I never go on video. So what we were looking at is mapping some of the collaborations between us as a group of scholars who were looking at scholarship using these tools. And we were actually formulating our research questions as we were exploring it. So it was very, very action-oriented and very hands-on. And we were focusing around Google Docs, and it was not all successful. That's part of the dissonance here. And I'll hand that over to Rebecca to talk a little bit about some of the shared bit that we have.
Okay, so this is just a quick matrix, and I'm not going to go through it in detail. You can look at the slides. We'll post them. Just sort of some of the sense of different types of things we did. We actually sent, we did actually get some things published in hybrid pedagogy, but also we had several things that are still out in there waiting for publication, a couple things that were rejected we're still working on. But really what we're going to focus here is actually just on the process in which we use to come to writing collaboratively, because I think that's really, it was fascinating that we've changed the way in which we write. So our focus has been in this study mostly on Google Docs, because Google Docs has actually, the technology itself enabled us to do what we do. This is where we talk a little bit about Ant, and that's your expertise.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I know that there's been some discussion here at the conference today around what does collaboration look like, what are some of the opportunities for that moving forward with tags or with other kinds of things, and so that is a discussion. And we were really grappling with this before, and we had introduced the active network theory. I'm not sure if anybody here is familiar with active network theory. I saw lots of examples of it through the conference, even yesterday and today, without actually calling it that. But active network theory is a research approach, if you will. It's not a strategy, it's not a methodology, it's an approach
that looks at all of the components of in any kind of venture from the network itself. So if you think in the last session, if you were in that, the smartest person in the room is the room. Active network theory would say yes, but the room also includes the walls, the electricity, the desks, right? The Wi-Fi. We couldn't collaborate if it weren't for the Wi-Fi. We didn't have desks to put things on. Those are all parts, those are all actors who have agency within a network. So that's really the approach that active network theory would be looking at. So things are a lot more complicated. So we were looking at that from our experience here to try to understand what were we really doing and how are we using some of the technologies in order to communicate.
So the agency we're looking at is the agency of Google Docs. And so we'll talk a little bit about the story of the Google Doc itself. And it sort of starts like this with AK writes a blog post that spoke to me. So I actually took his blog post and threw it into a Google Doc. So on my Mac, I create the Google Doc and I put his post in and then I throw it out to the team. From there, then Len jumps in with his thoughts about how this might affect. And so you'll notice the go back one. The comments start to get really rich as people come in and they edit not just the text but the comics to try and form something around.
And this is all technology within Google Docs in case any of you have not used it so far.
Okay. Then Maha, using her phone while she's commuting, is now adding different types of things. But really what's interesting here is how the mobile app doesn't show the comments the same way. So if we flip back to the previous slide, the comments here are on the side, but you can still follow the full path of the dialogue. If you jump onto the mobile device, now all of a sudden comments are interruptions in the dialogue, and it actually interrupts the dialogue for the comments and stuff. So it actually changes the way in which she thinks and sees the information. And then Simon tries it on his tablet and accesses it, and the comments actually go away. And actually, the tablet was particularly interesting because it actually shows Google Docs fundamentally different depending on the orientation you're using your tablet. So if you use it in landscape, it shows Google Docs a different way than it does if you use it in platform, which is kind of interesting. And then, Jeffrey...
I missed everything because I'm always waiting for alerts. I need something to pop up and remind me to go look at it. Otherwise, I don't know something's happening. That's just how I work. And it was really through the process of, as Rebecca's showing, we're working differently through some of the same technologies that actually work differently on different technologies.
Right. Okay. Next. So swarm writing is something, this is sort of what we're talking about here. It's a collaborative writing process. And rather than writing, previously we used to write like one person at a time. Somebody would draft it and then it would send it out in email to an attachment to the group. Everyone's probably done this, I'm sure. And then it's a round robin fashion. Each person takes their turn to write the documents, and then you get this thing back that's this next. Here we have multiple writers, different countries, sometimes writing at the same time, sometimes not writing at the same time. Everybody having the agency to go in and write and edit the text directly rather than the comments, and that's actually part of the importance of how swarm writing works for us. So different modes of working together. Right, yeah, so this is sort of the divide and conquer. One of the comments we wanted to actually bring up in here is through this process when we created something that was really beautiful, and then we had to cut it and cut it and cut it to get it to the word limit for a journal. And it really felt like, yeah.
Is it one person's voice is being cut, or is it our voice is being cut? So it raises those kinds of issues.
Right. One of the enablers, and this is sort of one of my favorite things, is the idea that you have to check your ego at the door. The reason this works, or has worked within our collaboration, is no one voice is greater than any other voice within the group. Everybody decided when they joined into this group to do this collaboration that, egos aside, we are all equal participants in this, editing it. So once the words are written, and this is actually sort of the beauty part, you write a paragraph, and then you come back a couple days later, and other people have, we call it swarming it, swarmed it, and you can see some of your ideas have been interleaved with others. But the words are different, but they're better, but they're not owned, and no one person can say that those words were theirs within the group. And that's actually sort of where the beauty comes out of it, is like the swarm voice comes through.
As opposed to if you would have collaboratively worked on the papers or something else, like you do the literature review, you write up the methodology, you somehow make a match. Did you have a question?
Yeah, did you ever feel like the result was not what you had
No, never.
We've had several, and actually we've got some interesting. We'll get to a slide in that particular issue with the storm. But we had several cases where we had disagreements, but they often disagreements would happen in the margins. And so what would happen is somebody would not agree with the text, so they wouldn't know how to change it, so they'd leave a comment. And then the comments became a whole discussion in and of itself, and that's actually where part of the richness came. And suddenly we have like comment threads that are like 20 comments long, and eventually somebody has to go through that and take it and consolidate once we come to some sort of agreement and get it back into the text. And it actually comes up with issues of the role of the leader. Because if there's no leader, then we never get anything finished. Somebody has to be that person who is the leader who brings it through, that gets it through to the end. This project, I started this one in particular, but you can tell when I'm not pushing it through because we haven't published it yet. Yep, okay, we have 2 minutes left. Challenges, costs. Because we are an international group, multi-affiliate, everyone's affiliated with different things. Anything that costs money becomes a challenge, particularly because $1 is not $1 for everybody, right? $1 in, what buys a cup of coffee here feeds a family of 4 for a week somewhere else, especially with the internationalness of our collaborations. That's really important. Bandwidth challenges. Google Docs has been brilliant for this one because it actually, we haven't been hit with bandwidth issues. We tried Google Slides when we put this presentation together. It was a complete disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bandwidth problem.
And it might just be because of text.
Yeah.
And so the text works really well. It's absolutely disastrous when we put these slides. We had to pull out and put them into PowerPoint.
Let's jump over this because I really want to talk to.
We only have probably 1 minute.
Yeah, 1 minute. So let's keep going. Keep going. Back one. When a team member wants to leave, that's the one I want to talk to because that's sort of the thing that that's the conflict issue, right? We create this thing as a group. We have a team of people, and then all of a sudden somebody in the group, something happens, somebody in the group no longer wants their voice in the group. What do we do? And we end up with this big discussion of how do we, you can't remove their ideas from the thing because they were part of it and their ideas caused other people's ideas, so their influence is clearly there. But on the other hand, you have to respect that if they want to be removed, then you have to disappear them. And they become disappeared within the group. And that's sort of an interesting quagmire that we've been...
Especially as opposed to like with some wiki technologies where you can actually see what exactly somebody edited. Google Docs does not track that. So it is one product.
Well, and because of the nature of swarm writing, it doesn't, even if that person interjected there, chances are other people have then responded from it, so that it isn't their idea anymore. Once you've put it in, the swarm owns it. And it's one area where I think we've learned that we need to be more explicit about that when you start. So when you join the swarm at the very beginning, that you know that once you put your things in, we can disappear you from the group, take your name off of things and not show up, but we can't disappear your ideas because they're swarm ideas now. They're not actually, you gave them up when you checked your ego at the door, as it were. So what's next? We're looking at, well, actually we're up Slacking now, which is sort of an interesting new tool set for our thing, and we're looking at sort of the agencies of different tools. Mm-hmm. And then we have a whole bunch of discussion questions that I'm not sure we have time to.
I think that if we could just maybe put them towards the end so that the other two presenters have a slot in our interactive slot. But thank you both so much. I was really thrilled to see something so practical about Google Docs. That was really fantastic. Thank you.
And Jeffrey. If I can figure out.
Kate always forgets me anyway.
If you do file open, it's right on the desk.
Yeah.
Oh, true, Jeff.
No, it's just one of me.
Actually, it should have been in the
Well, I've been
list,
accused of
I think
being
I
more than one
opened it.
person at times, but
No.
Did you just open it?
I don't think I've opened it. That's the problem.
Okay.
Go to Open Desktop.
This was quite a scheduling issue for us with this conference, that we had a number of people who
I don't know where to go.
submitted several propositions.
Let me do it. I meant to drive it. Let me drive.
Let me drive. Okay.
At one point
I do see desktop now.
You see it? Because I can't see. That's my problem. Okay, desktop.
This room
I put it
is the
in here so that I would find it. Hashtags.
many overlaps.
Thank you. I just,
How do I make it present now?
I think to present slideshow. Play.
There we go.
And Maha, are you live? So Maha has a speaking part. Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure that we could hear your voice before Jeffrey gets started, because the Rhizo really cool images come right after Jeffrey, and then I'll jump in behind you.
Do you need me to sit
Sure.
here, or do you want to sit?
So, hello, nice to see all of you again. Thank you very much.
It's been a long time.
This is quite convenient, right? This is a completely separate topic of research, and it's really around hashtags, the power of hashtags, which I have a particular interest in. And I found out by talking about it that other people have an interest in it as well, which is great. Once again, there's opportunities for how collaboration might happen. So so Whitney's here. Maha is joining us. She's Maha, just say hi.
Hi.
I was going to say, I hate to tell Maha what to do, but, we wanted to give her the opening. And Joyce, who is not able to be with us because she's in
South Africa.
At another conference.
ICDE.
Wonderful. So.
Yes.
Just that. How many of you have been tweeting during the conference? Some, right? A bunch of you. You've been using the DLearn hashtag, DLearn15, right? What we're going to ask you to do, if you're going to be tweeting at all during this session right now, if you could also consider using this tag, DLearn tags, as well, in addition to the DLearn tag, the DLearn15, just as a different tag, because we're just trying to isolate some of this, especially if we're looking at tags. No, we're not doing research on this. Okay. So
yeah, go for
okay,
it.
Great. So, so what we were doing is we were talking about what does tagging mean, and how many of you use tags outside of here, outside of the conference? And if you think about how you might use tags, you might use tags differently, and you probably see people using tags differently as well, right? I think that we have different strategies for doing that. Well, in our work with collaborating with one another, what we started to notice is we started to notice some trends there that we didn't really see in the literature. We looked at a lot of literature here. And we see a lot of literature talking about how people use specific tags in conferences and for events and social media and activism, all of that other stuff. But what we didn't really see a whole lot of is what we called blending and branching and subtweeting. Subtweeting we found a little bit on. But blending and branching hashtags is something we didn't see a whole lot of. So blending hashtags, we're basically using two different hashtags together, such as Rhizo15 and ET4 online. So in asking you to use DLearn15 plus DLearn tags, that's an example of blending tags, using two different tags for two different populations. Branching hashtags would be organically creating a more specific tag within another discussion for a specific purpose, a subgroup within the community. Somebody earlier today gave an example about using DLearn Collab or DLearn Collaboration. Somebody used that as an example, and I saw one or two other examples over the last 2 days. So we're taking the larger community, but now we're trying to then break off, or at least, if not break off, at least specify a subset of that for a more specific purpose. And if any of you are in the Slack community, how the Slack community itself, once you go there, then you have the option of the various sub-communities. This is looking at doing that within Twitter, which is already a public discourse. And then subtweeting response if things like that are only understood by certain people in the know. In other words, only certain people really understand some of the references. I think that we've even seen some examples of that over the conference.
And Maha, we'll turn to you to kick us off with forking.
Yes, right. So I need to see the screen, so I'm going to turn them on over here. Okay. No, Hannah, please go on. That's my daughter. Okay. So first of all, this forking, since you guys have been hearing Mike Caulfield and so on, so we're using that term, that there was this one meeting between Jesse Stommel and Dave Cormier where the MOOCsphere and the Rhizo15 merged into one hashtag Rhizosphere instead of using both hashtags for that meeting that they were having. Next slide. And then the branching is, like we said, like a special interest group. So Rhizo15 is the general Rhizo15 hashtag, and then the people who wanted to discuss the theory of Deleuze and Guattari specifically had a separate hashtag Rhizo15DG. And you would find people sometimes writing something and using both hashtags on it, or sometimes just using the one hashtag on it. And so if you use just the DG hashtag, it means you're assuming that the other Rhizo15 community are not interested in that. Next. And then this is the part that we think is interesting, is that when you tag something with two completely separate things, so ET4 Online is a conference that just happened in April, RISO 15 was a MOOC that happened over a couple of months, and there was a time where they intersected, and when someone posts something with both hashtags together, are they looking at that part in the middle of the Venn diagram where they're only talking to people who are in both RISO 15 and ET4 Online? Or are they talking to the both wider communities, so including all the blue circle and all the red circle? Do people, when they see two hashtags together, do they feel more included or more excluded? Especially when one of the hashtags is something like completely unfamiliar, they have no idea what that is. So if I'm in ET4 Online, I have no idea what RISO 15 is, and someone tweets something with RISO 15 hashtag on it, what do? Do I think it relates to me, or do I ignore it and assume that, no, that's just about those other people? So that's the question there, because what happened, for example, at that time we were doing our first ET4 buddy, which is going to show up in a minute. But anyway, somebody from RISO 15 gave us feedback that why were you tweeting this to our hashtag? They thought it wasn't related to them, while we did, because there were RISO 15 people at ET4 Online.
And it's a good point, Maha. So at one point during the ET4 Online conference, which I happened to be at, we put up a big poster in the Technology Test Kitchen and wrote RISO 15 on it. And so people who were at the ET4 Online conference that were a part of this RISO MOOC came over and signed the poster. And then another blending occurred when I went over to Mons, Belgium for the eMOOCs conference. I took that poster today and handed it to him, so that he could have that as an artifact for his wall in his office or wherever, because I thought that was a really valuable asset to him, because we were taking pictures of it, and it was in a lot of the ET4 Buddy Hangouts too. Just an example of branching, when we were at ET4 Online, something started to happen organically. Joyce was there, and when Joyce is around, things happen organically because she travels with her ukulele. And she's fabulous and phenomenal. If you don't know her, put it on your to-do list to get to know her. But this ET4 ukulele became a very separate sub-community. I believe there was also ET4 fire pit, or fire something. There was an outdoor fireplace, right? Some people are nodding because they were in that one. And so this was a very organic thing that started to occur, and Joyce and I and Laura Pasquini and Jeffrey and Maha got to talking about how this is just something that we don't think there's a lot of information on. We really wanted to explore it. So this was a great opportunity for us to bring these ideas to you and learn a little bit more about what your questions are from it. Maha, I'll only speak to this briefly because I want to hand this back to you, because this talks about ET4 Buddy and the blurring of it. But there were 3 separate hashtags that were created for certain conference sessions. The conference itself, ET4 Online, ET4 Buddy, ET4 Women, and then there was also ET4 Badges. And some of those were made on purpose, so they were conference-driven and created, where the others that we showed, ET Ukulele and Fire Pit, were more of the organic, created on the fly. And Maha, I'm going to turn it back to you, because I want you to be able to speak to the ET4 Buddy context.
Okay. And so what was happening with ET4 Online is that we decided to do does everybody in the room know what the buddy thing is?
It's V-Connecting's early days.
Yeah, it's the first time we did it. And so I was on the organizing committee, and I was responsible for the unconference and social media. I was one of the committee members for the social media. And so, they talked to me about, do you guys want to have a hashtag for your buddy thing? And we're like, oh, that's a good idea. And the ET4 hashtag, the look of the hashtag makes it easy to split it and make a new thing out of it, as opposed to, for example, dlearn. We started to think, what would look good with dlearn if you just remove the 15 and you add tags or whatever. But with ET4, the 4 kind of splits that. So we did that for the buddy thing, so that people who are interested just in ET4 Buddy, usually we tweet at the beginning with both ET4 Online and ET4 Buddy together, so that the larger ET4 Online community would see it. But then eventually we didn't have to do that. And then because I was also on the ET4 Women panel and a couple of other things, I changed the hashtags to those in advance, that the conference in advance would know that they could tweet to ET4 Women. I think we did another one, ET4 Messy. That Whitney was with me on that one. And because the conference itself had special hashtags for each session, but they were really ugly ones with lots of numbers in them. And these ones were much nicer. Of course, most other people didn't know about this, and most other people either didn't use that or they developed one on the fly, but it wasn't on the program. And so, for example, you could, after the ET4 Women panel, we had an ET4 Buddy session. And so somebody who's tweeting about that, for example, if they had space in the tweet. So, back to you, Whitney.
Take a look
Back
at
to you.
the graphs of each of these different hashtags. And one of the things that we found is within each of these little sub-communities, even ukulele, the second hashtag that was most commonly used was ET4 Online. And that was an opportunity for people to find it, right, to maybe share it back to the larger community so people could branch off. And so ET4 Snark, which was for snarky tweets, started out with something to do with George Siemens and the rock star. I don't remember exactly how it got started, but if you want to know more, Rebecca can probably fill you in. But ET4 Snark was born during that session, and it became its own little subpopulation where anyone who had something snarky to say went there. But they did all start with that ET4 Online as their second most widely used hashtag. Let's see. So then blending versus ranging. Oh, we got two minutes? Okay, so then let me just skip on. Subtweeting. So, Jeffrey, do you want to get into this?
No, I'll wrap it up at the end.
Okay, so taking a look at subtweeting. So ET4 Online was already this community, and really that ET4 Snark became this subtweeting space. And although the second hashtag, most widely used hashtag, was ET4 Online, so everybody could get to it and find it if they were Twitters, or on the Twitters, then this was really the space where all that subtweeting was occurring. So people were finding it and seeing it, but it wasn't always very popular. So, and I'll skip ahead to you.
Great. So the different kinds of hashtags and hashtag usage was really the focus of our interest here. And a lot of it just came out of our practice. What we found is when we started talking about this and collaborating on this, we found that we had these similar experiences, but we didn't know what to call it. We didn't see a lot of this out there in the discussion that we saw it really happening. So kind of like organically happening, okay, now what is it? If you think about the different kinds of chats, the different kinds of MOOCs, and we have just a number of examples here about this just because I think we only have one more minute, so I just want to get on to the last slide. We're exploring this.
Yeah. Do you want me to just go to the last slide?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because we, too, came prepared with our own questions in case you didn't have any.
Yeah. So, for example, perhaps these are just-in-time tags that are more for information and professional development. In other words, these things, if we try to, or companies try to mandate all of these things, it may not work, right? Because no one wants to be told what to do. But if we find that there are opportunities for people to collaborate or to show interest that has some sort of sharing or some sort of future possibility, such as short-term massive events, looking at locations and how locationality and geospatiality would fit in, and even with the CL MOOC and some of these, and while a number of these are online events, some of there are conferences which are very short, 2 days. I mean, just think about all of the literally thousands of tags and tweets that have been used to generate in the last 2 days, just with DLearn here, DLearn 15. Right, as opposed to some of these other events where there are tens of thousands of them because they go on for weeks at a time. So,
yeah.
Just to
Maha, any final comments as we close?
No. Do we take questions now or at the very end from the audience?
She's on the next one too, so she is staying on. So it's not like questions are at the end, Maha. So if you're comfortable with closing,
yeah, this is my session. this entire hour is my session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maha.
Thank you. Do people always clap at presentations?
It's not very common. You were awesome. That's why. Take a bow. Take a bow. They can't see you, but do it anyway.
I think my screen is frozen. So.
Browser up or something?
Hey, Andrea.
Hi.
So the browser's over there. The PowerPoint is over there.
I'm
So
not
what do you
on
need?
Google
Anyway?
Drive. Google Drive. I just need Chrome.
Yeah, you're gonna have to drive.
I'm gonna have to
Your
drive.
dog
Like
is in the
the
wrong place.
Well, and they moved my dock and I can't find it, so I'm like, ah. Yeah, I know exactly. Here we go.
So we have with us also for this presentation Christina Hendricks as well. So it's the three of us, Andrea, Christina, and me.
Hi, everybody. There are some slides coming up if we could
To get there. Yeah.
find them. Maybe we could just they're on my laptop right here. If we could just put my dongle into my laptop and.
And we'll leave the audio. Yeah, we'll leave the audio where it is. So the audio will still have Maha on this screen.
Okay.
There you go.
Perfect.
But it means that Maha can't see the slides.
Okay. Well, she can. Maha,
Christina, do you need the slides? Because I have just one slide, but Christina has several. So
No,
would
I'll
you
just
rather?
follow along. I'll follow along on my own computer.
You know what you could do? Do you know what you could do? You could share your screen, Christina, so that when it's, if you want, or whatever makes sense to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience with our technical stuff. So these are the three of us. You already heard quite a bit from Maha. And Christina, say hello so they can recognize your voice.
Hello.
That's Christina. And,
That is awesome.
and I am Andrea Wren. We're going to talk very briefly, because I'm aware that our session is almost over, about an anti-MOOC called TVSC. We call it a MOOG, sort of jokingly, a massive open online game. And yes, we are aware of the fact that education games are sometimes less fun than other games. We will talk about that because it presents a real problem for higher education. So TVSC started life in 2012. Was invented by Jesse Stommel and Pete Rohrbaugh for a conference at Duke. It was originally called Twitter versus Zombies. We had to drop the name Twitter because Twitter got mad at us. And then we dropped the zombies for reasons that Maha's going to talk about intercultural awareness. And so now it's just a hashtag, TVSC. We tried calling it Technology versus Zen. It's been through many morphs. And it's run at least 8 times massively on Twitter with thousands of different players. And what I'm showing you right here is a flipbook made during one of the editions of Play. And this was made by somebody who plays under the name Nana Lu. Oh, and look, you can see Sam also. It was made by Nana Lu, who is a player who played with us and is a phenomenal player. I don't actually know who she is. She plays under the online identity of a 100-year-old lady, and she's quite fabulous. And she made this book of the as an archive of the artifacts produced by the players. So as a way to sort of explain incredibly briefly what TVSC is, I'm just going to show you some of these artifacts that were produced. And then I'm going to move right on to let Christina talk. So the game is played beginning on Twitter with everybody tweets to the hashtag. And there are, at the beginning of the game, three possible actions. You can either recruit, resist, or rescue, right? This comes from the original dynamic of zombie tag. If you think about the physical game zombie tag, where you're trying to run away from a zombie, and the game functions on a contagion metaphor, which is so appropriate when you think about virality in online spaces, right? So you can recruit, you can try to get somebody onto your team, you can resist, no, I don't want to join your team, I want to stay on my team, and you can, for me, the most important one, you can rescue. You can step in and protect somebody else online, which we think is one of the key literacies that this game communicates. Moves on beyond that to enable players to teach each other many different kinds of digital literacies, and I think Christina is going to talk about those. Is that right, Christina?
Okay. Yes, I am. I'm here. So I can see the screen from here, so if you just go to the slide, then I can see what's going on. So I'll just start off while you're getting the slides up. When I first started playing this game, I think it was in 2013, I thought about it as a kind of digital literacy in a very simple sense. So to me at the time, digital literacy just meant, oh, I can figure out how to use Twitter, I can figure out how to post something on my blog, I can figure out how to interact with other people online. It was largely a matter of technology use. But then as I played it over and over, and as I got onto the team that was helping to organize it, I started thinking more deeply about what digital literacy means. And then, of course, Doug Belshaw's idea of digital literacies, plural, came up for me. And I just want to highlight 3 of those. So if, Andrea, if you could just advance, I think it should highlight the 3. So cultural literacy, critical literacy, and creative literacy. So with cultural literacy, whoops, no, sorry, I can go back. It doesn't matter. With cultural literacy, what that, for what I got from Doug Belshaw, it has to do with figuring out the culture of how to act and speak in a particular context. So whereas speaking on Twitter is different than writing on a blog, is different than being in a Google Hangout, et cetera, It's learning the sort of norms of speaking and being in these different areas. And that, I think, is an important way of thinking about literacy for this game as well, because people are not just playing on Twitter, they're writing blog posts, they're taking pictures, they're engaging in other ways. Critical literacies, that has to do with things like asking, as we'll see with Maha's presentation, who is excluded? What are the power structures and assumptions behind our practices online? What assumptions lie behind what we say and how in these various contexts, and who are we excluding when we speak in certain ways? And then the creative aspect of digital literacy for Doug Belshaw is a matter of creating new things in ways that you would not have otherwise done. So actually really breaking the boundaries of what you thought Twitter was for, or what you thought blog posts were for, or who can write together across geographical boundaries with people you don't even know. So those were 3 of them that I thought were very important in this game. So now we can switch to the next slide. So the other thing that I really love about this game is that it challenges the student-teacher binary. So the game, as we set it up in recent years, had 2 teams. It was technology and nature. But what ended up happening is people just sort of took over. So the person who's in quote-unquote charge is not really in charge, because the players end up just sort of doing what they want, and they created a bunch of other teams. There was a lot of teams on that game that ended up not really continuing on. So we ended up with technology, nature, and dragon bovines, which were dragons and cows that joined together. So they created their own teams. We create rules and strategies and player actions together collaboratively on Google Docs, and then we choose which one we're going to insert. And then people can just stop following the rules. You can move to the next slide, Andrea. People can just say, you know what? I don't want to play the game the way it's being played, and I'm just going to do something different. So I've got a tweet up here from Maha and one also from Jim Stouffer. What happened in this zombie version of the game was that there were some people who did not want to play the zombie version, who just really were not into the sort of, violence of it, and decided we're just going to create a new type of player called the chorus. And what the chorus does is it comments on the action from the outside through poetry, which was fantastic. I just love the fact that the authority structure is very different. So the teacher becomes another player, and the students can really take over. And I think that's all I'm going to say. Oh, the next slide, really quick. Another aspect of people just not really playing as we had originally thought. Instead of having teams that were sort of competing against each other, by the end of one of the games, we had a collaboration with somebody saying, why don't you post here to talk about how we work together to survive? We can't survive by just being in separate teams. We have to work together. So that was just very different than what we had ever thought. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Christina. So Christina ends on this lovely, hopeful slide of a very local site here, the Golden Gate Bridge. I think this was made by Dog Tracks, who's one of our wonderful, all of those fabulous flying cows are always his. They're also clouds with flames and everything. So this was a very hopeful moment, right? Let's all work together using technology to... And so I, of course, then want to say, but wait a minute, these spaces are also dangerous. They're dangerous for women. They're dangerous for people of color. They're dangerous differentially based on where in the world you are. We also had an issue when we were playing that some of our players were using different speeds of connections and connecting from different parts of the world. And so many of the tweets in the game are time sensitive. In order to play, you have to respond in such a quick time, and then that became a disadvantage for players playing specifically from Egypt, who couldn't connect quickly enough and therefore were disadvantaged via the technology in the game. And so, in other words, the game itself is a dangerous place, and this is something we really struggled with. And as we were thinking about this problem, what we were realizing is what the game ended up staging is what we actually experience online, which is the differential power structures. We experience a lot of risk online, actually, and that what the game ends up giving us is the opportunity to teach people how to engage with risk, how to realize the risk they're taking, and how to estimate and choose to disengage if that risk is becoming too extreme. So obviously this is a board game of Risk, right? But when we talk about risk literacy, I like to quote my friend Jade Davis of Haystack. Many of you I'm sure know her. And she talks about risk literacy, commenting that when we teach in online spaces, once the data and information are shared, they are no longer solely in control of the learner, and we don't always know what the risks of that are, but we have to anticipate them, especially if we were responsible for guiding learners through new areas of knowledge. This game is designed to guide learners through new areas of knowledge, and what we discovered is we can't guide them. They take over the game. That's good. That's what we want. That's rhizomatic, one could say, right? Coming back to the keynote we were just in. But it also means that then we are needing to give people strategies for protecting each other online. And that's why I commented at the beginning that rescue hashtag became, for me, one of the most important aspects of the game. Feminists now are working very hard on creating strategies for rescuing and for stepping in cases of online bullying, of doxing, all of these things that we know going on. And we think that TVSC can be one method of teaching this crucial literacy to our students of how to intervene for themselves and on each other's behalf. That said, I'll turn it over to Maha.
Okay, and a lot of what I'm going to say has been said before, so I'm going to go through it really quickly. Is that any cultural references that you use when you're trying to play an international game, you need to realize that whatever cultural references you make won't necessarily transfer very well. So apparently people in the US who watch this show, or even people here who watch the show, something related to zombies, they think it's not that violent and they think it's cool and everything. But for me it felt violent, and because we were playing it with my students here in Egypt, I wasn't comfortable using that. And then Andrea and I talked first, and we asked Pete if we could change it, and he was like, yeah, cool, let's do that. But then as we played, there were all sorts of other imperialist assumptions that came out that we weren't, like, again, the time zone, the time difference thing because of the infrastructure here, the internet in Egypt. And also the way we collaborated with each other involved a lot of, learning how to work across time zones and across each other's schedules, and trying to, for example, we were trying to to name one of the teams, and there was one word that had a swear word in it that people were thinking of using, and I was like, I cannot use that with my students. I can't go into class and use that word, the F word, in my class. And so there were these little things that we had to work around. And I think this experience that we've had, regardless of the fact that it was a game that we played with our students, it's a way that the landscape of higher education, I think, is changing, and the way global collaboration is going to change the way people think of working together. And all the examples we've said so far, like throughout the whole hour, have been of global collaboration of some kind. And what it means for Western academics who want to work with people in other places that usually someone like me would work on your terms, but it's shifting so that we're working to find a place that works for everyone. Andrea, I'll shift back to you.
So I'm aware that we are probably out of time at this point.
A minute.
Oh, okay. Well, mostly, but what we really do want to do is enable a conversation, and I'm sure you have discussion questions from the earlier presentations as well. So I'll just finish with one final comment, which is the team of us, and this is a picture of the larger team that implemented this game. It's played over 4 days. You see Maha there, Janine DeBase, who's fabulous, J.R. Dingwall, myself, Christina, and Pete Rohrbaugh there. We worked together, and we've mounted this game a number of times. It takes an incredible amount of time. The game runs 24 hours for 4 days. How does that work with employment, with labor problems, with needing to have a life, to take care of your child, perhaps, right? Hold on. And also, and I'm just going to leave you with this problem. Whoops, that's not the problem I was going to leave you with. Is it really fun for our students? You've probably seen this image before. Chocolate-covered broccoli, people call educational games. Delicious, right? Is it really fun for our students? We, the facilitators, had a blast. Many of our students had a blast, but maybe educational games are precisely the wrong way to go. I don't know that answer, but I open it to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We can put these guys on the main screen. We're going to put you guys on the main screen.
Minutes to say it.
not know what.
There you are. Oh, there's Hoda on the main screen.
Say hi, Hoda.
Hi.
It's nearly midnight. She has school tomorrow.
But I think the biggest comment from the presentation is that the players took over.
Can you speak a little louder? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Hi, it's George. How you doing? So the one thing in common across two presentations was that you can't own the game. The players took over the game. At ET4 Online, they thought they could own a hashtag, but you can't own a hashtag either. The people basically take it over and do what they want, as many organizations and individuals have discovered who thought they owned a hashtag. So any comment on that common ground of non-ownership?
I think any of the presenters would be interested.
Yes,
in that
any
too.
presenter, please.
Yeah.
Well, I just for us for T versus Z, for me anyway, that's kind of the point. Like that was which I figured out as things went on. When I first started playing the game, I thought, oh, these are the rules, and you just follow the rules. And in fact, in my first game, I was kind of a rule jerk in a way. I was like, no, you're not doing it right. And then I got the point, which is that a lot of the benefits of it is to break down that binary between teacher and student, and the people who are in charge versus those who are not. You know, and if things went haywire, we could do something about it. I mean, if people were being nasty to each other, we could do something about it, but that didn't happen. So
That reminds me of two things, actually. My students, because they're Egyptian and they're used to submitting to authority, they wanted to create a new team really early on in the game, and I kept telling them to wait, and they listened to me. And there were a lot of things where they just didn't try to go outside, and then the only time they started to do that is that when I went to sleep and I wasn't the one facilitating, so they just had to figure out what to do. And so it's I think important for learners to realize that they need to take charge of their own learning. It's not necessarily the same for everyone, so over here it's much harder. And then the second thing, and this is me doing this, for ET4 Online, for ET4 Buddy, at the very, very beginning when we started doing it, I was telling Michelle, who was the chair at the time of the conference, and I was like, I won't let anybody into the Hangout unless they're registered for virtual participation. She's like, why are you doing that? Just let anybody come and join, you know? Because they're not seeing the live streams of the talks, but they could join the buddy thing. And so that's what we've been doing, obviously, for other conferences now. We just let anybody come and join the virtually connecting sessions. Because whatever aspects of the internet are free, there's all sorts of issues going on behind what Google does with all of this, and what Twitter does with all of this, and what Facebook does with our data. But for what we do control that we can do, there's no reason for anybody to own it, really.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from the room? Yep.
I have a quick question for the first group. So it was real interesting hearing about how this collaboration was working, but it seemed like there was a lot of social aspects of it that were put into play before the technology was ever even part of the picture. And so I guess what I wonder is that assumed, or is there thought about how could you get these technology-supported groups to work this way among strangers, or is that even possible? Is that part of your vision?
So we were actually strangers when we started these collaborations. So we had all been part of sort of Rhizo. So we might have had an interaction from that perspective. The reality is we came together and wrote a couple of autoethnographic papers, having never met in person. And so all of our collaborations have just been, or had been that way, and it was actually through the act of writing the paper and through the act of that collaboration that we got to know each other better.
Yeah, I was also going to add, but it's also when somebody says, well, have you, maybe we should do this. Oh, that's a great idea. Let me start a Google Doc. And drop the idea there, even if it's just a one-sentence idea so we don't lose it. Oh yeah, can you invite me to it, right? And then that's how another fundamental way that some of this actually started.
But the reality is the Google Doc was central in the collaboration itself. If we didn't have the Google Doc, the collaboration probably would never have happened. The tool has agency there. And I think it has really important agency in that prospect.
At the same time, there's, I've been part of lots of collaborations around Google Docs to play it out the way that yours did, because we didn't have this social decision about how we were collaborating, So where did this swarm idea come from? Was that part of Rhizo, or?
I think it was part of Rhizo, and some of it seemed to be a bit organic, but I think we had to look back, because when it worked, we had to step back and reflect on why did it work, right? Because you're right, often these collaborations fall apart and they don't work. And I look back on the collaborations I've had in the past with the Word docs that have been thrown around, and some of them that have been successful and not successful. And this one was just a little bit deeper than the others, and I think part of it was, I think the biggest thing is we checked our egos at the door, and that was something that just was understood when we went in. So we didn't have anybody being a powerhouse ego trying to push the collaboration in one direction or another. And yet we didn't have groupthink either. We allowed for dissonant voices within, to hear what each other had to say. And when somebody said something that we didn't agree with, we tried to dissect that.
And also it was that, one of the things since we came out of some of the shared experiences with Rhizo, where the whole point of it is to share and see what the product would be. But one of the other elements is there really, none of us, just with our life situations and where we were not competing for the same jobs. We were not competing in any of the kinds of ways where, no, I have to be listed before you because of this reason. And so that helped to take some of the edge off. So we've been able to really explore this in different venues, and really pushing it forward without really having that pressure of, oh, if you're the first person, good, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to move away from this session, but I'm just enormously grateful that you've all shared your practice so openly. These are projects I've known about for a while. I've watched from the side. I thought, ooh, what's that? And now I know just so much more. So thank you all so much, and for your patience with the technology and the contraction of time. Thanks, Maha. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you. Okay, we're going off the air.
Yeah, good night, Hoda. Does anyone else want to say
Good night, Hoda.
Bye.